From Manhattan, Kansas, it's time for Public Occurrences with Jason Beats, the online public affairs show with in-depth world news and analysis you won't find anywhere else.
Welcome to Public Occurrences. I'm Jason Beats.
And I'm Ben Dietrich. Today we are reporting from Hale Library at Kansas State University. On this episode of Public Occurrences, we will cover activists, academics, and adversarial reporters around the world.
The Intercept is reporting that the National Security Agency and FBI secretly monitored the emails of 5 prominent Americans of Middle Eastern descent under secretive procedures meant to target terrorists and foreign spies. Documents provided to The Intercept by NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden showed the following individuals were monitored by the NSA and FBI. Faisal Gil is a long-time Republican Party operative and was previously a candidate for the Virginia House of Delegates. He held a top-secret security clearance and served in the Department of Homeland Security under President George W. Bush. Asim Ghafoor is a prominent attorney who represented clients in terrorism-related cases. Houshang Amirahmadi is an Iranian-American professor of international relations at Rutgers University. Agha Saeed is a former political science professor at California State University who championed Muslim civil liberties and Palestinian rights. Nihad Awad is the executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, the largest Muslim civil rights organization in America. All 5 Americans deny any involvement in terrorism or espionage. Nihad Awad told The Intercept, "I think all Americans should be worried about NSA surveillance and the targeting of American Muslims, because if it is American Muslims today, it is going to be them next."
A political science researcher has been arrested in Tajikistan. Alexander Sodakov is a University of Toronto PhD student. He was conducting research on conflict resolution in Central Asia in collaboration with the University of Exeter in Great Britain. Sodakov was arrested while interviewing local opposition politician and activist Alim Shirzamanov. Shirzamanov says police tried to arrest him when they arrested Sodakov, but were unable to because his supporters intervened. The interview was conducted in the Gorno-Badakhshan region, which saw fighting between the Tajik army and local armed groups in 2012. Soon after the arrest, Tajik media reported Sodakov had been charged with espionage and treason. Human Rights Watch says it is not clear what charges Sodakov currently faces, which the organization says could mean Tajik authorities are considering their options in response to international opposition to his arrest.
The first independent news outlet has opened in Cuba. Cuban dissident Julian Assange launched 14ymedia.com in May. Cuban law prohibits the distribution of independent mass media and has blocked access to the site. However, Cuba has not arrested Sanchez or shut down the site. 14Y Media is the first independent media outlet in Cuba in the past 50 years and has not shied away from publishing news critical of the Cuban government. 14Y Media reported on the 20th anniversary of the sinking of a boat carrying refugees attempting to flee to the U.S. Cuban authorities sunk the ship, resulting in the death of 27 adults and 10 children. 14Y Media has also reported an agreement between China and Cuba to expand cooperation in cyberspace. 14Y Media says Cuba may be on the verge of expanding access to the internet, which few Cubans currently have access to, while simultaneously creating a Cuban version of China's Great Firewall. This could include cyber police, dissemination of pro-government commentary, blocking websites, and the creation of social networks that seek to control rather than allowing users an environment of free exchange.
A magazine editor and a human rights lawyer in Swaziland have been found guilty of contempt of court for writing articles critical of the country's Chief Justice. Becky Makubu, editor of the Swazi political magazine The Nation, and Thulani Maseko, a human rights lawyer, were tried for articles written in The Nation in February and March. Judge Pendulo Similani ruled the Swaziland Constitution restricts freedom of expression in order to maintain the authority and independence of the courts. He also said it is in the public interest that the authority and dignity of the court is maintained. Judge Similani concluded an important fact cited in both of the articles was inaccurate. However, the outcome of the case did not depend on this inaccuracy. The judge also said it would be wrong for the courts to allow people to pass judgment on matters which are still pending in court. Maseko wrote in one of the articles at issue in the case, "Many will say that what we saw is nothing but a travesty of justice in the highest form." Makubu and Maseko were sentenced to 2 years in prison.
A Sudanese woman sentenced to death for converting from Islam to Christianity has left her country for the United States after spending the past month in the U.S. Embassy in Sudan. Meriam Ibrahim Ishag's problems began last year when a relative accused her of adultery because the relative believed her marriage to a Christian was not legal. Muslim women are not allowed to marry Christian men in Sudan. Meriam Ishag married her husband Daniel Wani in Sudan in 2011. Wani is a naturalized U.S. citizen. Ishag was charged with adultery and apostasy. The crime of apostasy in Sudan is committed when a person converts from Islam to another religion. Ishag said she has always been a Christian. Ishag was convicted of both charges. She was sentenced to 100 lashes for adultery and given a death sentence for leaving the Islamic faith. Ishag gave birth to her daughter in prison. Ishag was released after Sudan came under intense international pressure from foreign governments and human rights organizations. Ishag was rearrested by Sudanese authorities after attempting to leave the country with what prosecutors claimed were forged documents. She was released 2 days later and went with her family to seek protection in the U.S. Embassy in Sudan. She lived there for a month before being allowed to leave the country for the United States.
3 Al Jazeera journalists have been convicted in an Egyptian court of aiding a terrorist organization and reporting false news. Peter Gresta and Mohammed Fahmy were sentenced to 7 years in prison. Ber Mohammed was sentenced to 10 years in prison because he was convicted on the additional charge of possession of ammunition. Mohammed was in possession of a spent bullet casing he found on the ground during a protest. Egyptian judge Mohammed Nagi Shahata commented, "The devil encouraged them to use journalism and direct it towards actions against this nation." Judge Shahata also said the journalists reported false news by collecting audio and visual recordings and editing them by removing parts and adding it to different events. He said this served the interests of one of the banned terrorist groups by showing the country contrary to the truth in a situation of chaos and upheaval by portraying it as a lost country suffering from division and internal fighting. The journalists were convicted of aiding the Muslim Brotherhood, which was labeled a terrorist organization by Egypt's interim military government shortly before the journalists were arrested. Some of the evidence presented in the prosecution at their trial had nothing to do with their case, including a pop video by the Australian singer Gautier, footage from a Kenyan press conference on a terrorist attack on a Kenyan mall, and a package about horse welfare in Egypt by Sky News Arabia. Al Anstey, Al Jazeera English's managing director, said the verdicts defied logic, sense, and any semblance of justice.
A man who created guns with a 3D printer has been arrested in Japan. 27-year-old Yoshimoto Imura was arrested after posting a video online of him shooting the guns. Yoshimoto told a Japanese newspaper that he did not think producing the weapons was illegal. Last year, I interviewed Cody Wilson, right before his organization, Defense Distributed, created the first 3D printed gun. He said one of his goals was to circumvent laws in countries that have stricter gun control than the United States.
I'm interested in engineering people in gun control states, creating this and seeing what happens. That'll be the next fun thing. Oh, BBC, and this is why I'm giving BBC the very first. I'm letting them see it first. I want it going there. I don't want it becoming a national thing here first. I want it going there and scaring them. And hitting BBC World News and like, oh my God, this is a real world problem. And then kind of tipping them off and saying, oh look, no, Australia, interesting, 3D printing guns. In your nation, by the way, they're pressuring the feds to shut me down. The Home Secretary of Australia. I mean, like, they hate it. So I want them. They're my audience. And we'll get back to the United States.
Wait, so are you from Australia?
No. It's just these gun control states, rabid, are just, they cannot stand the idea. So therefore, they're my audience. This audience is somewhat, especially in the beginning, was less receptive. They're like, what, I can buy a gun at Walmart, and this isn't a big deal. I'm like, no, it's not about that. So those who are most receptive, I think, are those who are most intolerant of the ideas, and that's who I want. That's who I'm targeting.
Japan has strict gun control laws. Very few people in the country possess guns or come into contact with them. Yoshimoto frequently took to Twitter to defend the possession and manufacturing of guns. He wrote, "Gun restrictions are a violation of human rights."
In February 2014, the National Dialogue Conference in Yemen agreed to transform Yemen into a 6-region federation. A popular movement in the south and east of the country is calling for secession from Yemen. The group's leaders say the South's oil resources have been illegally stolen by the Yemeni government. They also accuse northerners of controlling power and wealth in the country. The Yemeni government is also currently fighting 2 separate civil wars. The Houthis are a Shia Muslim group in northern Yemen that has waged a civil war against the Yemeni government since 2004. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula was formed in 2009 and is fighting to overthrow Yemen's government and eliminate Western influence from the region. The U.S. has attacked Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula targets in drone strikes, leading to concerns about civilian casualties. Human Rights Watch reported that a U.S. drone strike in December 2013 killed 12 men and wounded 15 others who were part of a marriage procession in Yemen.
Public Occurrences is an independent production written and produced by me. Anthony Williams is our cameraman. Another project of mine is my blog National Security Stories. So far, I have covered the stories of 42 prisoners at the U.S. military prison in Guantanamo. National Security Stories can be found at jasonbeats.blogspot.com.
I host Blues Power with Ben, a podcast where you can hear and learn about a wide variety of awesome, intense blues. You can listen to Blues Power at bluesdjben.podomatic.com.
A couple friends of Public Occurrences are launching their own innovative projects. Lindsay McNary will be hosting a sports talk show on K-State HD-TV. She has not yet decided on a name for the show. Matt Harrison has composed several electronic songs, which can be found at soundcloud.com/EKO Grand E Music. He wrote the song that is playing right now. The links to all of these projects are in the description below.
Who are the political prisoners in your country? Let us know in the comments.
I'm Jason Beats.
And I'm Ben Dietrich.
Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Public Occurrences.